Before we can untangle any specific cross-border transaction, we have to map out the architecture of the Foreign Exchange Management Act. Imagine two items land on the advisory desk at the exact same time. The first is a $15,000 monthly services payment to a U.S. consultant. The second is a $2 million shareholder loan from a foreign investor. An advisory team cannot approve or reject either of these based on instinct. They have to run both items through FEMA's specific legal architecture to find the correct compliance pathway. By definition, FEMA governs dealings in foreign exchange, foreign securities, and any transaction that creates or alters a foreign asset or liability. This diagram shows the two operative principles at the heart of the statute. On the left, current account transactions operate under an open gateway. They are freely permitted unless a specific rule restricts them. On the right, capital account transactions face a closed gateway. They are regulated, and you can only proceed if a specific rule explicitly authorizes the transaction. Applying that to our desk, the $15,000 service payment is a routine expense. It doesn't create a foreign liability, so it routes to the open current account gateway. The $2 million loan, however, creates a foreign liability. It routes to the closed capital account gateway, requiring a specific provision under the borrowing and lending regulations to move forward. If you misclassify the nature of the funds at this first step, you will apply the wrong default rule, and your entire legal compliance strategy will fail. Let's isolate that $15,000 services payment and clear it off the desk. Because it is a current account transaction, we run it through the Current Account Transactions, or CAT rules. The CAT rules use a strict three-schedule filtering system to determine if a remittance is allowed. Looking at this decision tree, watch how the data drops through the filters. First, Schedule 1. Is it a prohibited transaction like lottery winnings? No. It falls to Schedule 2. Does it require special ministry approval? No. Finally, Schedule 3. Does it exceed the Reserve Bank of India's individual limits? Again, no. Because the payment survives all three schedules without hitting a restriction, Section 5 of the FEMA statute guarantees that the remittance is freely permitted. Current account freedom is achieved by proving a negative. If the transaction doesn't hit a restriction in those schedules, the money is free to move. Now we turn to the $2 million shareholder loan. As a capital account transaction, we cannot prove a negative. We have to locate a specific enabling rule. To find that rule, we have to look past the main FEMA Act. The regulatory architecture operates across 4 distinct levels of authority. This blueprint illustrates the hierarchy. The foundation, Tier 1, is the parent statute enacted by Parliament. Sitting just above that is Tier 2, the broad rules issued by the central government. Together, they form the legal boundaries. Next comes Tier 3, the regulations issued by the RBI. This is exactly where the advisory team locates the FEMA borrowing and lending regulations, the specific legal mechanism required to enable our shareholder loan. Finally, Tier 4 snaps into place. These are the master directions and circulars, the granular, highly updatable instruction manuals issued by the RBI to the banks executing the trades. Successfully advising on a capital transaction requires tracing a single continuous thread of authority from the Parliamentary Act at the bottom all the way up to a highly specific RBI master direction at the top. But knowing the rules on paper is useless if you don't know which regulatory actor actually administers them in practice. The central government holds the power to create rules, while the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, the DPIIT, issues foreign investment policy and administers the government facilitation portal. For automatic route transactions, the RBI's role is not to grant prior approval. Instead, the RBI acts as an overseer, enforcing compliance after the fact through mandatory reporting. Then there is the authorized dealer, or AD Category 1 bank. They verify documents and execute the foreign exchange transactions. They do not make the law, and they cannot grant regulatory approvals. If you misidentify an actor's authority, like asking an AD bank for a regulatory approval it simply cannot give, you will cause immediate and costly procedural delays for your client. Once the bank clears the $2 million, the funds have moved, but the legal file remains open. The transaction is not finished until all reporting obligations are fulfilled. On this compliance dashboard, you can see the transaction-specific reporting architecture. You file Form FCGPR for equity instruments, the FLA for annual returns, and for our shareholder loan, you must file Form ECB before the first drawdown. If a deadline slips, the RBI prescribes a late submission fee matrix. This LSF allows parties to regularize delayed paperwork by paying a calculated fee without triggering a full legal battle. However, actual contraventions of the FEMA statute carry a severe penalty framework. FEMA imposes civil and monetary fines that can reach up to 3 times the sum involved in the contravention. For quantifiable contraventions, the RBI offers a compounding process, a mechanism to voluntarily admit the violation and resolve it administratively. A cross-border transaction reaches final legal closure only after the reporting is verified and all risks are regularized. With the payments verified and the reports filed, the cross-border file is mapped and closed. By the time you finish this module, 3 capabilities should become clear. First, you will classify current account and capital account transactions before advising. Second, you will navigate FEMA through the 4-tier hierarchy and identify the correct regulatory actor. And third, you will recognize reporting, penalty, LSF, compounding, and regularization pathways. The map is set, the architecture is built, and it is time to begin the module interactions.